Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be tackling a topic that I think a lot of us struggle with,
Yeah,
especially in the academic world.
absolutely.
We're talking about perfectionism. So we're diving deep today into an article called Perfectionism Might Be Hurting You.
Right.
And it's really aimed at ambitious students. But honestly, I think the insights here apply to anyone
Yeah,
working in a high-pressure environment,
absolutely. And especially in academia,
especially in academia.
where the stakes feel so high all the time.
Yeah, the stakes are high, constantly being evaluated.
And you're surrounded by brilliant people.
Yeah,
So it's easy to fall into that trap of feeling like you're not enough, like
right.
you're not measuring up.
Exactly.
And that's where perfectionism can really take hold
Yeah.
and start to have a negative impact.
Yeah, what I found really interesting about this article is it points out that there isn't just one type of perfectionism.
Right?
There are actually three different kinds.
There are.
So I'm curious to hear you break those down for us.
Yeah, so the article talks about self-oriented perfectionism, which is that kind of classic, setting impossible standards for yourself, never feeling like anything's good enough,
Right.
always striving for that kind of unattainable ideal.
Right, right.
And then there's other-oriented perfectionism, which is when you hold other people to those same unrealistic expectations.
Oh.
So it's not just about you, it's about everyone around you having to meet this incredibly high bar that
Yeah.
you've set.
Okay,
And then there's socially prescribed perfectionism,
okay.
which is the feeling that everyone else expects you to be perfect.
Oh, that's a tough one.
That one's really insidious, I think, because it's not even necessarily coming from you.
Right.
It's that feeling of like the whole world is watching
Yeah.
and judging, and you have to perform perfectly all the time.
Right, and I can see how all three of those can really play out in academia.
Absolutely.
You have the pressure to publish, to get grants,
Mm-hmm.
to present at conferences,
Yep. To teach brilliant.
to teach brilliantly.
All of it.
All of it. And I mean, so much of it is subjective too.
Yes.
It's not like there's always a clear right or wrong answer.
Right. It's all about interpretation and perspective.
Right. So it's like, how do you even measure perfection in
Exactly.
a field like that?
And the article actually highlights this stat that I found really alarming.
Okay.
It said that perfectionism in college students has significantly increased
Wow.
between 1989 and 2016.
That's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, and socially prescribed perfectionism actually doubled
Doubled.
in that time period.
That's pretty shocking.
It is. It's worrisome.
Yeah.
Because it suggests that this pressure to be perfect is only intensifying.
Right. And I wonder how much of that is driven by, social media
Oh, absolutely.
and just this constant comparison with others.
Yeah, that highlight reel phenomenon where
Right.
you're only seeing the best of the best.
Exactly.
And it's easy to forget that everyone struggles.
Right. Everyone has those moments behind the scenes
Absolutely.
where things aren't perfect.
But you don't see that.
You don't see that. Yeah, it's all curated
It's all curated, yeah.
to look like, everyone's killing it.
Right. And so then you feel like you have to be killing it too.
Exactly. And if you're not, you're failing.
Right. And that can be incredibly damaging
Yeah.
to your self-esteem, to your motivation.
Yeah. I mean, it really takes the joy out of things.
It does.
Like you can work so hard on a research project,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're only focused on the flaws,
Right.
you miss out on celebrating the accomplishment.
Exactly. And the article actually talks about how perfectionism can lead to
Yeah.
the release of stress hormones,
Wow.
like cortisol.
Oh, so it's like physically impacting you.
It is. It's not just a mental thing.
Right.
It's a physiological response.
That's intense.
It is. And
Yeah.
over time, that can contribute to anxiety, depression,
Wow.
even physical health problems.
So it's like a vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle.
Yeah, because the stress makes it harder to perform well,
Exactly.
which then feeds into the perfectionism.
And the need to be even more perfect,
Right, to overcompensate.
to try to control things, and
Right.
it just spirals.
Wow, so it's not just about, being a high achiever.
Mm.
It's actually impacting your health
It's impacting your well-being.
and your well-being. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the article also mentions how perfectionism can affect relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not just about, your work.
Right. It bleeds into every area of your life.
Wow.
Because if you're constantly setting these impossible standards,
Mhm.
you're not only putting pressure on yourself,
Right.
you're putting pressure on the people around you.
It's like those expectations get projected outward
Exactly.
onto everyone else.
And it can make it really hard to connect with people,
Yeah.
to build genuine relationships.
Right, because no one can live up to that.
No one can live up to that. And it
Yeah.
creates this distance,
Yeah.
this sense of like you're always evaluating.
Mhm.
Right.
Instead of just being present
Mm-hmm.
and enjoying the connection.
Yeah. So it's like perfectionism is really this kind of isolating force.
It can be, yeah.
Wow.
Because it creates this barrier
Yeah.
between you and the world.
So it's not just about, doing good work.
No.
It's about your whole life.
It's about your whole life,
Wow.
your well-being,
Yeah.
your relationships,
Yeah.
everything.
This is heavy stuff.
It is. And I think that's why it's so important to talk about it,
Yes.
to bring it out into the open.
Mm-hmm.
Because so often perfectionism is seen as this positive trait.
Right. It's like you're supposed to be striving for perfection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the article makes this really important distinction
Okay.
between striving for excellence
Yeah.
and needing to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really crucial difference.
Yeah. Because striving for excellence, that's about growth
It is.
and learning.
It's about pushing yourself
Right.
to be your best.
But in a healthy way.
In a healthy way.
But needing to be perfect,
Yeah.
that's driven by fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of failure,
Well,
fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough.
So it's like coming from a place of scarcity.
Exactly.
Abundance.
Instead of from a place of like, I'm already worthy and I'm just trying to grow.
I'm just trying to, reach my potential.
Exactly.
And not because I have to prove anything.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a subtle but really important difference.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And I think recognizing that difference is the first step
Okay.
to breaking free.
So it's about awareness.
It starts with awareness.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. So now that we've kind of laid the groundwork
Right.
and talked about what perfectionism is
Yeah.
and how it can show up, especially in academia, I'm really curious to dive into
Yeah.
some of the solutions.
The how-to.
The how-to.
Yeah. Let's get practical.
Because it's one thing to identify the problem,
Right.
but it's another thing to actually do something about it.
Exactly.
So does the article offer some strategies?
It does.
Okay, awesome.
For taming that perfectionism beast.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So let's talk solutions.
Let's do it.
How do we actually break free?
Yeah, because it's one thing to say,
Right.
okay, I'm a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
I see how it's hurting me,
Right.
but now what?
Exactly. So the article outlines a few strategies
Right.
that I think are really applicable to the academic world.
Okay, so
And one of the first ones is
yeah,
challenging those unrealistic expectations that perfectionism loves to feed on.
okay. So how do we do that?
Well, it starts with a mindset shift.
Okay.
It's about focusing on progress over perfection.
Okay, so it's not about lowering your standards.
Right.
It's about reframing them.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you're always going to be learning.
Right.
You're always going to be growing.
It's a journey.
It's a journey,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Okay.
It's actually a good thing.
So how do we apply that in academia?
Well, in academia, it might mean letting go of the need to write a groundbreaking paper.
Right, because there's always going to be
Yeah.
someone else doing something.
There's always going to be something more to discover.
Good.
So it's about focusing on making a solid contribution to your field.
Okay, so not about being the best.
Right.
Just about doing good work
Exactly. And doing work that you're passionate about,
that you care about.
that you care about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And another strategy the article highlights
Okay.
is setting realistic deadlines.
Okay, but how much control do we really have over deadlines in academia?
I mean, a lot of times
Yeah.
the deadlines are imposed on us.
Right, like grant deadlines,
Exactly.
journal submission deadlines.
Conference deadlines, all of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. We don't always have control over the big picture deadlines.
Okay.
But what we can control
Yeah.
is how we manage our time and energy
Okay.
within those constraints.
So it's about breaking down those big tasks
Exactly.
into smaller chunks.
Setting mini deadlines for ourselves
Okay.
and being flexible when unexpected challenges arise.
Because those always happen.
They always do.
Right.
So it's about having a plan, but also being adaptable.
Okay, so it's about finding that balance.
Finding that balance, yeah.
Structure and flexibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this leads us to another important strategy
Yeah.
that the article stresses, and that's seeking support from others.
Okay, so who are we talking about here?
Well, in academia, this could involve connecting with trusted faculty members,
Great.
mentors, or even peers
Yeah,
who are going through similar experiences.
because they get it.
They get it.
Yeah.
And sometimes just voicing your struggles
Yeah.
to someone who understands
Just saying it out loud
Yeah.
could be helpful.
can make a huge difference.
Right.
It can help you feel less alone, more empowered to move forward.
Yeah. And I know academic.jobs.com can be a good resource for finding mentors in specific fields.
Absolutely.
So that's a good place to start.
Yeah, they have a whole network of academics who can offer advice and support.
Okay.
So definitely check that out.
Awesome.
And another strategy
Right.
that the article highlights is self-compassion.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, it's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a friend
Okay.
who's struggling.
So it's about silencing that inner critic.
Exactly.
They can be so loud,
Especially in academia.
especially in academia.
Yeah, where self-criticism can be rampant.
Right, because you're surrounded by brilliant people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to feel like you're not measuring up.
Exactly. So it's about reminding yourself that you're human,
Okay.
that you're allowed to make mistakes.
Mistakes are part of the process.
They are.
Yeah.
And that your worth is not defined by your academic achievements.
Okay, so it's about separating your identity
Right?
from your work.
Exactly.
That's hard.
It's hard, but it's so important.
Because otherwise,
Aha.
every setback feels like a personal failure.
Right. And that's not sustainable.
No, it's not.
It's a recipe for burnout.
So how do we practice self-compassion?
Well, it starts with awareness,
Right?
noticing when that inner critic is getting loud,
Mm-hmm.
and then challenging those negative thoughts,
Okay, so talking back to it.
talking back to it. Yeah.
Or would I say this to a friend?
Exactly.
That's a good question to ask.
Because chances are you wouldn't be so harsh
Right.
with someone you care about.
So why are we so harsh with ourselves?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
But I think it's about learning to extend that same compassion inward.
Yeah. It's like being your own best friend.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we've talked about challenging expectations,
Mhm.
setting realistic deadlines,
Right?
seeking support from others,
Yeah.
and practicing self-compassion.
So those are some pretty tangible strategies.
They are.
Yeah.
And they can make a real difference.
But what about the social media piece?
Oh, yeah.
Because we talked about how that can really fuel perfectionism.
Absolutely. It's like a breeding ground for
What?
comparison and inadequacy.
Right, because it's all curated.
It's all curated.
You're only seeing the highlight reel,
Exact.
not the behind the scenes.
Right. And so the article actually suggests
Okay.
taking breaks from social media.
Like a detox.
Yeah, like a digital detox
Oh,
if it's negatively impacting your mental health.
Because it's not about cutting it out completely.
It's about finding what works for you,
Okay.
setting boundaries, and prioritizing your well-being.
So it's about being intentional
Exactly.
with your social media use.
Yeah.
Okay.
And remembering that. You don't have to be online all the time
Right.
to be a successful academic.
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in that,
It is.
especially when you see everyone else posting about their accomplishments.
Right. But it's not a competition.
No, it's not.
It's about focusing on your own journey.
Okay, so to recap,
Yeah.
some of the key strategies for taming perfectionism are reframing expectations, setting realistic deadlines,
Yes.
seeking support,
In.
and practicing self-compassion,
Absolutely.
and being mindful of your social media use.
Yes.
Okay.
And remembering that it's about progress, not perfection.
Right?
It's about embracing the journey, learning from your mistakes, and celebrating your successes,
Yeah, big and small.
big and small, and remembering that you're not alone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So many people struggle with this, especially in academia.
All right, so we've covered a lot.
We have.
But before we wrap up, I want to talk about one more thing,
Okay.
and that's the idea of seeking professional help.
Yes.
Because sometimes perfectionism can be really deeply ingrained.
It can be.
Yeah, and it can be hard to break free on your own.
Absolutely. And there's no shame in seeking help.
No, there isn't.
It's actually a sign of strength.
It's like you're taking
Yeah.
your mental health seriously.
It's like you're saying, I deserve to feel better,
Right.
and I'm willing to do what it takes
To get there.
to get there.
Yeah.
And therapists can provide you with tools and strategies
Like that.
to manage perfectionism and develop a more balanced and fulfilling approach to life.
Okay, so it's not just about fixing the problem, it's
No.
about learning to thrive.
Exactly.
That's awesome. All right, so if perfectionism is something that you're struggling with, know that you're not alone. And there are resources available
Absolutely.
to help you break free.
So reach out.
Reach out.
Yeah. Talk to someone.
Don't suffer in silence.
And remember, progress, not perfection.
Progress, not perfection. Okay, I love that. Well, this has been a really insightful conversation.
It has.
Thank you for sharing your expertise.
My pleasure.
And for all of you listening, we hope this has been helpful and empowering. And remember, you are capable and worthy, just as you are. We'll be back next week with another deep dive.
So we've talked a lot about the challenges of perfectionism,
Yeah.
especially in academia.
Especially in academia.
And we've explored some strategies for managing those tendencies.
All right, we talked about reframing expectations, setting realistic deadlines,
Right.
practicing self-compassion.
Absolutely.
But I think it's also important to talk about the resources and support systems that are available.
Yes, because you don't have to face this alone.
Right.
There's a wealth of resources out there,
Okay.
both within and outside of academia, that can help you develop healthier coping mechanisms.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, a good place to start
Yeah.
is within your own institution.
Okay.
Many universities offer counseling services
Okay.
specifically designed for the needs of students and faculty.
That's awesome.
So that can be a really valuable resource.
Yeah.
It's a safe and confidential space to process your experiences with perfectionism, develop coping strategies, learn techniques for managing stress and anxiety.
Right, because sometimes you just need someone to talk to.
Exactly,
Yeah.
who understands the unique pressures
Yeah.
of academic life.
Yeah, and I've heard that academic.jobs.com can be a good resource for finding mentors in specific fields.
Yeah, they have a whole network of academics who can offer advice and support.
Okay, so it's not just about finding jobs.
No.
It's about connecting with a community.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And don't underestimate the power of peer support groups,
Yeah.
connecting with others
Yeah.
who understand.
Oh.
The unique pressures of academia
Yeah.
can be incredibly validating and empowering.
Right, because it's like you're not alone.
Exactly. You're not the only one who's
Yeah.
struggling with these things.
It normalizes it.
It normalizes it, and
Right.
it creates a sense of community
And belonging.
and belonging.
Yeah.
So definitely seek out those opportunities
To connect with others.
to connect with others. Yeah.
Awesome.
And beyond institutional resources,
Oh,
there are
yeah.
also numerous books, articles, online platforms dedicated to helping people overcome perfectionism.
Okay.
One book that comes to mind
Yeah.
is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
It's all about embracing vulnerability, letting go of the need for perfection, cultivating self-acceptance.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And there are so many others out there, so do some research.
Okay.
Find what resonates with you and start building your toolkit.
Your toolkit of resources.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And remember, it's a journey.
It's a
So
journey.
there's no quick fix.
Right.
It's about consistently showing up for yourself,
Okay.
practicing those strategies, and seeking support when you need it.
So it's like building a muscle.
It is.
Yeah.
The more you practice, the stronger it gets.
Okay.
So be patient with yourself
Yeah.
and celebrate your progress.
Celebrate the small wins.
The small wins.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has.
I've learned a lot,
Yeah.
and I hope our listeners have too.
Me too.
So to recap, perfectionism is a beast, but it can be tamed,
It can be tamed.
and there are resources available to help you along the way.
Absolutely.
So don't be afraid to reach out. Ask for help. And remember, progress, not perfection.
Progress, not perfection.
All right. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.